Hey, what's up, you guys? This is D with Level 3 Properties. Welcome to episode 3 of our Mini MasterMind group. We have a special guest with us today, Mr. Robert Wasson. Welcome. How you doing?
Good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Doing pretty good. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for showing up today. So he is a father of 2. He's been a general contractor for over 14 years based out of Palmdale, California with Raw Construction Company. Yeah, so, I kind of wanted to bring you on today. I'm currently finishing up my BRRRR project out in the state of Missouri, and we're going to be going over some of the scenarios of things that I've been dealing with my current contractor, the good and the bad, all that good stuff. And we wanted to basically get some of your thoughts, suggestions, and basically your perspective on maybe what you would have done in that particular scenario to make sure that the job was going a little smoother, from hiccups and things of that nature that occur. So I actually wanted to start today with a question from the audience, from Joshua Kelly out in California. He asked, what is the best way an investor can figure out whether he or she can trust a contractor that they want to work with, and the rehab estimates for properties to be fixed up, essentially?
First thing I would do is look for a licensed contractor, first and foremost. I know you may get a better deal with somebody that's not licensed or somebody that might be a handyman. And although there are some handymen and there are some unlicensed people that do really good work, the problem with that is that if something were to happen, like let's say that they flooded your place or somebody got hurt on the job, if they're unlicensed, they also don't have insurance, they don't have workers' comp. Yeah. So ultimately, the person that's going to be responsible for that is you, the property owner. And that also keeps you safe, because if something were to happen and they're unlicensed, you have no recourse. So you can't go to the license board and complain or go after their bond. If they're licensed and they have a bond, you can go after their bond. You can file a complaint with the license board. They'll come out. Sometimes they'll do an investigation. They'll inspect the work that was done, and you can sue that person. Hopefully it doesn't come to that, but sure. When they're unlicensed, you don't have the opportunity to do things that way. So definitely find somebody that's licensed. After that, anything like a website, social media, pictures, maybe some past clients that they've had, some referrals that you can call and talk with about the contractor and the process. Okay. It's hard to find out a lot about somebody you don't know. So the best thing to do is talk to people that have used them, talk to people that they've worked on their properties. So.
And that's interesting you bring that up, because I remember the first time I talked to a contractor, it was to renovate the garage for one of my rentals. And so it was a very small, quick project, but he was reluctant to want to give me any referrals, because I asked him, I was like, can you let me know of prior clients that you've had that can vouch for you, essentially? And he was like, oh, well, that's confidential. I can't release their names and they might not want me to do that. And so I was like, oh, okay.
That would be a red flag to me, because if you have past clients that are happy with your work, you can easily call them and be like, hey, I have somebody that is looking for referrals. Do you mind if I give them your number? And they're not going to have a problem with that. So yeah. If somebody says that it's confidential or they're kind of reluctant to give out numbers, I'd probably question it a little bit.
When I first reached out to the contractor in Missouri, it was from a referral from the wholesaler that I was working with. Okay. And, they said that he had been working with a lot of investors out there, so that the fact that he was investor friendly was definitely a good thing. He's not going to think that it's a fixer where we need to, spend a bunch of money to fix it up. But so the referral aspect of it was good. So say if it was a referral, if somebody said, hey, Robert, he's worked on all these projects and everything, it's still a referral at the end of the day, which obviously is a lot better than just picking somebody off of Google or whatever.
Right. I'm a contractor, and I'm not going to lie, they're hard to find. They really are. And it's just, there's so many out there that cut corners and don't do a good job, and I see it all the time. And it's sad, because I see a lot of times what happens is these people will go with somebody that's unlicensed or somebody that is the cheaper guy, and in the end they end up paying for it because it has to be redone or fixed by somebody that's doing it the right way. So looking to save money, and it actually costs you more in the long run.
That kind of leads me also into part of my next question, because when you're dealing with a new client and you've worked with them before in the past, and or they're just a seasoned investor looking for a new contractor, the contractor that I'm working with right now, especially because he's out of state, I pretty much almost text him every single day, but when it comes to verbal conversations, like I try not to let more than 2 days go by, because I'm like, okay, well, I want to make sure that there's, not just accountability on his side, but accountability on my side. But at the same time, I don't want to feel like I'm micromanaging him either, that he's, that he's competent and he's, doing his job. So what What do you say is like a good balance between bugging the hell out of him and then actually just giving him the space to do his thing?
Right, and so that's going to come with just the relationship that you build with that contractor. So obviously in the beginning, until you learn, how long they're going to take on a project, or even until you trust that contractor, it's going to be a thing of, where you're probably going to have to check in every day. But that's something that you just establish in the beginning, like, hey, you know what, I'm out of state, so can we have a conversation, every evening or maybe every few days, just to kind of go over everything, give me some progress updates, and a good contractor should understand that, you are from out of the area, so you don't get to stop in on the project and see what's going on or check the status, so that should be something that's definitely set between you guys. There is a point where you don't want to be calling or texting every single day or all the time, every few hours, bugging them, because it does get to the point where, sometimes we're like, man, they just need to let me do my job,
right.
But a good contractor should have no problem checking in with you, and just making decisions together with you. So
what I started doing was I started texting him either most of the time after we've already had a conversation. It's like a list called reminders for the both of us, and it's a recap of kind of what, like, short, quick bullet points of what we just talked about. So like what he just finished working on and what he's going to be working on for the next week. Because I noticed that he kept forgetting to look at the scope of work. And so he was like, oh yeah, what did the scope of work say again? Or what did we decide we were going to do? And so I was like, I need to do something where it'll jog his memory and he could just look at his phone really quick because the text will be there. What kind of method do you actively do with your clients when you are, mid-project? And is it more of a texting thing, calling, a mix of both? Or?
Well, so I don't do anything for people that are out of state.
Sure,
Sometimes we do, but it's nothing like renovating an entire house. So we'll do stuff for people out of state, like we'll replace a roof or maybe remodel a bathroom or something small. I'll just tell them, hey, we're going to start this, if there's anything we run into. Because, it's renovation. You're going to run into stuff. It happens. There's stuff unforeseen. So, and that's when we communicate. Most of my clients, they're cool. They don't bug me, or they just kind of cut me loose. But I have a good reputation, and that comes with that. So my clients know, like, I don't have a website. We're all word of mouth. We're all referral. So just having that reputation, my clients know, like, hey, like, this is a scope of work, and it's laid out from the beginning. And so me and my guys, we know what we're doing.
So when it came down to, going through the rehab estimate and putting together the scope of work and trying to budget out everything, when it comes down to tracking costs and requesting draws from clients and things like that, how does that conversation even begin with the client as far as, going through the whole draw process and things like that?
Right. So that I usually lay that out at the beginning in my proposals and in my contracts, just so we're all on the same page. A lot of the jobs that I do, I like to float, I don't take money until we're done.
Oh, wow.
So if it's a really big project and we're going to be there for a couple months, then I know that I'm going to be there for a couple months, I'll lay that out in the contract. Like, hey, it's this much the day we start when we drop materials off, and then we'll take like either weekly payments or bi-weekly, or until something's done. Like, say we're renovating a whole house, like when like drywall's done, get paid out on the drywall line item, because I line item everything out in my proposals. So that way, that we're all on the same page and they can see what they're paying for each specific task.
That's how I essentially started off that process as well too. I was like, okay, week one, we're going to work on this, the approximate cost and all that stuff. So we were installing a second bathroom. And as we were going through it, he's like, oh, okay, then, my guys are working on the bathroom now, and then we're going to start working on the bedroom. And then, I have another guy in the kitchen starting to work on that. And all the payments and everything and all the estimates were based on, all right, we finish one thing and then move to the next.
Kind of in that order?
Yeah, as opposed to now we're mixing all these things all at the same time. So I was like, I don't know how to track this.
Right.
You're like a quarter of the way through with the bedroom, and then you're or halfway through on the kitchen, and you're maybe an eighth of the way through on the bathroom. I'm like, how would I even calculate how much you're going to need for that week?
Yeah, so something like that. So I'll do like percentage instead of billing for like drywall or electrical. Like we'll just do a percentage. So and I'll line that out. If I know the project is going to kind of be like we're bouncing around like from room to room and stuff, I'll bill it out. Like, and I'll put in my contract weekly or bi-weekly payments, and I'll just be like, hey, like we're at this % of the project done, and I'll request this certain amount. Well, obviously, until you build rapport with the contractor and you guys trust each other, definitely don't. I mean, as from an investor standpoint and somebody that's new, until you trust your contractor, don't let them get ahead of you with payments. So, like, what I'm saying is don't don't overpay for work that hasn't been done, because if something happens and they don't finish the job, you're going to be out money for stuff that they haven't completed yet. So always make sure that you guys are on the same page with either the progress of the job as a percentage as a whole, or just line items that have been completed and paid out. So I'll take like a deposit, maybe a mid payment, and then the end. So,
okay. I'm working with a hard money lender, and that requires me to have cash reserves, because it's like I have to pay for everything up front and then I get reimbursed. And essentially it was a little bit difficult with me with the contractor, because I don't know why, but he always had a tough time sending me photos. Well, I need those photos so I can, obviously just prove that it's been done, but also because as I'm drawing up the spreadsheet of the scope of work that the lender is requiring me to keep up to date and everything, and doing a lien waiver and all that stuff as well too. I have to attach all that with the invoices and stuff and send it in a package to them before they can send out an inspector, make sure everything is done, and then give me the reimbursement.
Right.
So that was always a difficult aspect of it, because then I'm like, okay, well, my personal funds are tied up. I'm trying to confirm the work is done so I can get reimbursed for the next part, because then I'm on the time crunch, because I need those funds for the next part of the job.
Yeah.
So it's been pretty interesting. So just hearing about just this whole, that you float so much of it right out the gate, I'm like, damn, I wish I could be doing that.
I mean, if the contractor wants to get paid, he's going to provide photos. That's the way that it is. So you either provide photos or you can wait. Okay. And honestly, a lot of investors, they're looking to get the absolute cheapest price they can get, and a lot of them like to cut corners, unfortunately. And I see a lot of that myself. So it's like it's hard to work with people like that, because I've had some investors where I give them a bid and they want me to go in and do this or do that and kind of like hide stuff, and I won't do it. I just won't, because it's my name on the line at the end of the day.
Yeah. So. The only thing I can think of, like literally as far as just like cutting corners, is maybe not getting something permitted, like we've talked about.
So and I don't have a problem with that. If they don't want to permit it, whatever. It does put me at risk, because if we get caught, then they're going to fine me, because I'm the contractor and I know better. So if it comes down to us getting caught, I'm like, hey, if I get fined, you're paying for this. But it just depends on the thing that they want us to forego the permit on. So if it's something big, I definitely won't do an addition without a permit. I'm a contractor, so always permit everything. But
right. For sure.
Yeah. But if you're not going to permit it, take pictures, take detailed photos, maybe some videos of everything, like everything up to code. Plumbing's as deep as it's supposed to be below the slab, everything done correctly, your framing, your insulation, your electrical. Just take pictures, and then later on, if you do want to get that permitted, you can show it to the city, like, hey, look, these are the pictures, everything's done correctly, and they might sign it off for you. Worst case, they might make you open some walls and check some stuff out.
When you're in your initial discussions with a new client and you're going over a timeline, I remember one of the things that was focused on a lot, especially in the books that I was reading, as far as just for investors looking to do rehab projects, was setting the expectations for potential delays for whatever reason. So there was things like, weather, especially if you're in a snowy climate or massive rainy climate, other jobs that the contractor might be working on, holidays, permits, obviously, your subs getting sick or wanting to also take vacation time. So my contractor was very ambitious as far as the timeline. So for instance, we closed on the property on December 21st. And, I let him know everything that I was trying to do. We went through the scope of work and all that stuff. And he's like, oh yeah, I can get this done by early to mid-February. And I was like, okay, that seems a little quick. It snows, we're in kind of the winter season in Kansas City, Missouri. So I'm like, did you take that into account a little bit? And he's like, oh, well, yeah, I mean, it snows a little bit here and there. And I'm like, I've been there before. Like, it snows. So I was like, all right, let's give it like another 2-week buffer on that, just in case for whatever reason. And so I was like, how about we look at mid-March, give us an extra month, just to be on the super safe side. I'm glad I did, because now it's mid-March.
More than lenient.
Yeah. And so how does that conversation normally go with, setting those expectations?
Right. So I always give myself a bit of a buffer. If I think something's going to take 6 weeks, I'll tell my clients 8.
Okay.
And then I will let them know, like, hey, there are things that happen, weather, things come up, people get sick. And I give myself a buffer because then if we finish early, they're fully stoked. So it makes me look good.
Yeah, exactly.
So there have been some projects where we run over, and they're understanding, you know, it happens, especially when we run into things that are unforeseen and it takes a little bit longer. But then if you're permitting stuff too, you also have to deal with the city and inspections.
Is it relatively quick out here, or is it, you know?
For most things, I can walk into the city and grab a permit and have it the same day.
Whoa, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Worst case scenario, like full on rehab, the entire place, the worst, you know, kind of fixer upper you've ever seen.
So the county right here is terrible. Like I've dealt with them for a year before on some things.
Damn.
Yeah, and they like you can call, nobody answers the phone. You can go in there and they're like, oh yeah, we'll send this over and we'll get. They don't do it. You have to poke. So they're a joke. They always have been though. So yeah, it really depends, and that's something that you have to take into account is you don't know how long it's going to take unless you've done it before in that city or that jurisdiction. Like, that's why a lot of people will go in and do things without a permit.
Yeah,
it's just, because the whole process of getting a permit is just time consuming. It's difficult. There's so many hoops to jump through. Actually, there was an investor in town here. And they flipped the property and they replaced a roof and they didn't get a permit for the roof. So they called me because I have a roofing contractor's license, and you can't pull a permit for a roof unless you're the owner builder or a roofing contractor.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So they called me. They were like, hey, we flipped this property. They're calling the roof out. We need a permit. And I was like, well, you guys have already replaced the roof. They could, if they wanted to, make you strip that roof because they're going to want to inspect the sheeting. So luckily, like I submitted everything to the city. They were like, hey, what's up? I said, well, it was roofed. They didn't get a permit. They're like, all right, cool. You know what? We'll sign it off. They got lucky that time.
I read 2 books by David Green from Bigger Pockets, the Long Distance Investing and the BRRRR Strategy. He talks about in the book, you're working with the contractor and you're discussing, you know, the rehab estimate and the payment system and all that, and talking more specifically about the timeline. So he has a philosophy because it's more of like a psychological thing as far as incentivizing. And some people are more positively motivated by, okay, I'm going to get a reward or a payout or a big lump sum at the end of the project kind of thing. And some people are more motivated by negative reinforcement, whether it's like, oh man, I don't want to get in trouble if I don't finish this in time, or I don't want to get penalized. And so he brings up this concept of, okay, well, we have our budget. Let's say it's, you know, 50,000, whatever the case is. If the budget's about 50,000, he'll have like a percentage of the I guess the holdback at the very end, to where I think he had like a 2 to 5% kind of range depending on the amount of the budget, to where if we're starting on January 1st and the deadline is March 31st, that's our deadline. He says, okay, if you finish the project ahead of time or ahead of schedule, or by the deadline, you'll get a 5% bonus based on the estimate. So if it goes, a week past the deadline, then there'd be a 5% penalty from the budget. So it would be a deduction if it goes that extra week. And for every week thereon after that, it would be a continuous penalty to kind of like, prevent a shady contractor, right, or one that just wants to dip out or something from not finishing the project.
Right.
So with that kind of a scenario, I didn't necessarily do that with this contractor, because I felt that I didn't really have much leverage in the whole thing. It's my first time going through it. I'm not trying to get on his bad side right out the gate, especially with the whole penalty talk. They love to hear about the whole bonus aspect of it. Yeah. But so your thoughts on that concept?
I mean, me as a contractor, I probably would never agree to being penalized or getting a bonus, just because we run into things. The timeline sometimes goes along. Why should I get penalized for running into something? But I also don't expect a bonus either. I mean, like I said, a lot of my clients, they'll make us breakfast and have coffee ready. I mean, bake us cookies, and sometimes they'll have an ice chest full of drinks, all the stuff we want. And
that's so cool.
They'll toss us some cash at the end of the job. But my bonus for finishing early is my clients are happy. If my clients are happy, that's repeat business, because they're going to tell their friends, they're going to tell their family.
100%.
They're going to come in, the job's going to look amazing, we're going to finish on time. So that's my bonus.
What we were talking about when it comes down to the timeline of things, he was always saying that, okay, yeah, let's talk this whole thing through as far as the project is concerned, because if we think it's going to take 3 months, let's try and tack on the what ifs as much as we can, because then if we say, all right, best case scenario 3 months, let's just tack on another month just to be on the safe side, because then at that point, once we get to that 4 month timeline, let's just say the contractor was being lazy or something, just he wasn't doing his job properly, or he was focusing on other jobs more than your job, or whatever the case is, then at least David, from having that strategy says that, well, we discussed it from the get-go if there were things that were delayed, worst case scenario and this and that, so that the contractor can basically never come back and say, well, you didn't give me enough time.
Yeah. And that comes back to just being on the same page in the beginning with timeline and everything, and then doing your due diligence on vetting a contractor, referrals, things like that, pictures, and that way you can talk to people, because a contractor with a bad reputation, they're not going to really care if they go over the timeline.
Quick question from the audience. So this one was from Pedro Diaz in Kansas City, Missouri. He said, putting together a scope of works seems daunting for someone who doesn't have any construction experience. What do you suggest a new investor or client do after they've either walked the site, seen pictures of it, to put together a solid enough scope of work for you, since they're going to be working with you on it? And essentially, because he doesn't have the experience, how is he supposed to? It's almost like a chicken and the egg kind of thing. Because that's kind of what I went through as well too with my contractor. I was like, okay, well, I want to put together this scope of work, but I wasn't there. I mean, I have pictures and everything, but I don't know what the hell needs to be done per se. So how would you kind of approach that in the beginning too?
If you can get a home inspection, that way you have an idea of the condition of the property, some things that might be wrong. That's the best way to go. But I know a lot of times, you're buying a property as is. So
exactly,
and it's tough, because if you don't have the knowledge or experience, you can't even look at pictures and pick stuff out that needs to be fixed or replaced. So I would start with the safety things. So like smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detectors, strapping on the water heater, just making sure all the windows open for egress in case there's a fire. Definitely needs to be a window in every bedroom that's operable.
Gotcha.
No bars on any of those windows. That's another big thing, especially if you're going to rent out. You don't want any bars on the windows. You want to make sure that if there's a fire, everybody can get out of the house safely. And then after that, I'd probably go, like, if the electrical panel's really old, some of them are a hazardous type, so you just got to do your research. There's a difference between flipping a house and selling it and renting it out. You might not have to do as much if you're just trying to rent it out,
Right.
So you might not want to gut the kitchen if you're going to rent it out. You can paint cabinets and just replace countertops, put some new hardware on them. So there's ways around doing big dollar things. Even a regular contractor, if they don't have an investor's mindset, it's going to be difficult for them to put together a list on selling versus renting, of things that need to be done.
So I kind of learned the hard way with that, where it's like, okay, I should have just, used the photos and everything that I had available, put together the most robust scope of work I could, send it to him, have him review that, and then go from there. How would you kind of approach that if somebody calls you up, says, hey, I want to remodel my whole kitchen? What's the first step as far as scope of work?
Yeah, so I always throw ideas to him, and it depends on the budget, I always kind of find out, like, some people are like, I don't care what it is, this is what I want. I mean, that's cool. It makes it easy, they want nice stuff, but some people will want to do something and they're on a little bit less of a budget. So I'll help them in that aspect, kind of source things out that aren't as much money or a little cheaper, and still help them to get what they want. I'll send a proposal over just detailing everything that we're going to do, and we'll have materials picked at that point. Sometimes I won't pick materials like if we're doing a bathroom, and they're like, well, we haven't really decided a tile yet. I'm like, all right, cool. You know what? Tile's on you guys. When this is how much you need. When you're ready, let me know. And I can hook you guys up with my supplier, get you the discount. You guys can go to the showroom and pick whatever tile you want.
What I've noticed from a lot of these, analyzer spreadsheets that other investors use, it's just like one clump of a price, so whether it's, certain appliances or, doing, like a full-on bathroom or whatever the case is, but they're not very clear as far as like the labor component to the materials component.
Right.
And I mean, I know that can be very wide ranging, especially from a material standpoint, good material versus bad material or not so good material.
The only way to get away from that would be for them to give you a price just for the whole project, labor and material. So obviously it's going to be more money, but then like, hey, you gave me a price to do this with labor and material, so it shouldn't go over that unless you run into something that's additional.
Right, okay, gotcha.
So I would never get a bag of chips or a drink on my client's dime.
I
say that, and I know it's minimal, and I know most of my clients wouldn't care, but I wouldn't do that because to me, I would be like, well, if they see me getting a bag of chips or doing this, they're going to think I'm getting other stuff and taking it just like you're saying.
Exactly what led me.
And I would never want somebody to think that I'm doing that,
Do you take that into account too, those costs of like travel and gas?
I do,
and,
you
absolutely.
do. Okay. Yeah, there's some things that I have like a set price or a per square foot price or stuff, but yeah, I take into account my insurance, my gas, my travel time, and that's the thing, every contractor has a different overhead. Some guys might make this much money, these guys might make this much money, this insurance, that insurance, just everybody's overhead is different.
Because in my mind, I always thought labor was charged by the specific project. Like, Does that kind of make
depends.
sense? Or?
Yeah, it depends. I mean, some things I'll take like my cost and I'll put my percentage on top, and that'll give me, profit, my overhead and everything above and beyond my materials, my labor price. So, and then some projects I'll charge per project.
So they have, some of these wholesalers, they have, they're called like showings, as opposed to like other traditional ones where they give you a couple days to kind of like, take your time with your offer and blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. So there was one where I went to a showing where it's basically like they bring a lot of people there, a lot of investors there. You get to, you can bring your contractor and all that stuff, and you get to do a walkthrough, and within, I think it's like an hour or two, you have to then put in an offer. So it's like right then and there.
Okay, so you got to get a verbal price from your contractor.
Yeah, yeah. So basically, it was the wholesaler and the contractor were there, and then they got me on the phone, and then he's like, all right, yeah, I think I could do it for X amount. So I was like, okay, sure, that's fine. But then I was like, well, I'm now kind of going against everything that I was really like training myself essentially, is to like look at the mechanicals and everything, and to look at just the big CapEx items, right? And so it occurred to me like, well, we didn't get up on the roof. We couldn't really check that,
That could be a big dollar item.
That could be a big thing. And so it's like for those big items where you really don't have much time to do your due diligence, what would you even just like recommend, somebody who is at a state that can't, look for themselves?
That comes back to finding a good contractor. Yeah. I could walk a property, and I could show up to a property in about 10 minutes, know what needs to be done to it by looking at everything. I could have in my head like, man, this roof shot, electrical panel needs to be redone. Oh shit. Hey, okay. And you got to have a good idea too, the age of the house. Like, hey, you have to, you can't obviously, if you don't have time to open up and look at the electrical or look at the plumbing, you got to take into account, and you may have to replace the plumbing. So you just check as many of those items as you can while you're there. But yeah, that comes down to having a good contractor that can walk and just visually take note of everything that needs to be done.
So like when you look at those kind of things where it's like the actual plumbing that may be behind the walls or behind the
you might not get to see that. So that may be an unexpected cost that arises. And same with the septic. You can always get a septic cert, but when they're in a situation like that where they're like, hey, we need an offer right now, you may be shooting an offer blind and not know that septic is bad and needs to be replaced. So just always don't ever get down to the line where you're like, man, if I get a flat tire, I'm going to lose my budget, or lose my profit,
Exactly.
So always leave a little bit of a cushion for stuff like that.
What would you say is like the top 3 things that they should, it's like, all right, at least look at these 3 things, and then if nothing else, at least you looked at those 3 things, if possible.
It's hard to say just with somebody that doesn't have any experience. Yeah. You could look at the roof. It's a tile roof. You can't tell because the membrane underneath the tile is what keeps it watertight. But you can look for stains inside.
Oh, yeah.
Or look for patches on the ceiling or new paint on the ceiling. That's a good sign that somebody has patched something. Could be a leak, a roof leak. Or
they're trying to cover it up. Oh,
all the time.
Damn.
I see it all the time. People are trying to sell a place. So unfortunately, there's a lot of shady people out there that want to hide some things. So stuff like that. You can look under the kitchen sink. A lot of times the kitchen sink is leaked and there's black mold under there. So look for that.
Damn,
electrical panel, so an old Sylvania or a stab lock panel, those are bad panels. They need to be upgraded.
Gotcha.
Cracks in the floor tile, if they're really big cracks in the stucco. So anything that's like 3/16 of an inch or bigger could be a structural issue.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's just hard if you're not experienced in it. It's really tough to pick all of this up on just a brief walkthrough.
What would you look for in the basement area first? Like first thing that would come to mind?
Moisture intrusion.
Moisture intrusion?
For sure, on the walls. So if you see efflorescence like salt crystal formations, it could be an issue with moisture coming through the walls. So that means that the walls haven't been waterproofed properly, and that could be a big expense because you have to dig down all the soil, then waterproof the outside of that all the way down.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So I would look for moisture. The base, that's a huge one.
Okay.
Or if there's a sump pump down there or something. Make sure that's working.
Okay, yeah. Ours had a sump pump in it, so we had to replace that because it was all.
They're not that much money,
Yeah, it wasn't too bad. And then, what do you think about like the bowing of the walls and whatnot as well too? Do you kind of like?
Yes, that's a.
Is that a common thing or?
It is because what happens when in a basement, what happens is those walls get wet and they freeze and then it heaves in. So.
Okay. Yeah.
But if the walls aren't getting wet and they're waterproofed, then that won't be too much of an issue.
Oh, okay, so. Gotcha. But it's not 100% proof getting the, okay,
No.
gotcha.
It just depends on how far. I mean, obviously every building, every house has some type of movement, some type of settlement. Over time things do move, things do crack a little bit. It's you can't prevent it.
Yeah.
But it's just to what degree has that moved, or has that particular item cracked? So.
Yeah. And that especially made it difficult for the Missouri property too, because the property, there were a bunch of hoarders. So it's like the basement's in like 2 sections. So there's like a middle wall dividing the whole thing, and then there's like an opening in the like right where the stairway comes down. But basically it's essentially like 2 big rooms. They divided it. The whole half section of it was just full. Like 3 40-yard dumpsters were ridiculous. Yeah. So and just a bunch of other crap that was upstairs as well too. But yeah, so it was like I mean, there could have been a whole crap mold, there could have been a puddle down there for all we know. All right, so to kind of revert back really quick to the other question, and is there anything else that maybe comes to mind when I'm, that I can maybe do for them?
Maybe like a gift card. I mean, obviously you'd have to find out where they like to eat, their favorite restaurant, a gift card to a good restaurant, or maybe Lowe's, Home Depot cards. You can buy some stuff for himself. I don't know. It just depends on what they like.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. It's like, I don't want them to think that I'm like, taking them for granted or anything, or not appreciative, because I'm the type where it's like, I want to show massive appreciation throughout the entire thing.
Right.
Because like you said, when it comes to reputations and wanting to work with them in the future for future projects, I don't want to go through the hassle of doing a new relationship, and starting that all over again. So I'd rather keep working with them if, I think that's pretty much it. Is there anything else that maybe came to mind for you at all? Or
just find a good contractor, man.
Yeah.
Build that relationship.
Absolutely. And I appreciate the time today. Thank you so much. So you guys can find Robert on Instagram. He's at raw_construction.ca, and on Facebook as well too. So go ahead and give him a good follow on there. Check out his work. He's got a lot of good stuff posted on there. We'll leave a link down below so you guys can see all the information as well too. And so once again, thank you so much. I know we've been wanting to get this going, and and so we're gonna get it cracking, make it happen, and we'll catch you guys on the next episode.
Let's get it.